They're meeting, and no one can find out what's happening in the meeting.
No transparency.
600 advisors.
Are you stopping them? Make them stop!
They're talking about taser and pepper spray to get her down. That's what their plan is. They're saying we're on private property, but of course they're doing public business on private property.
Raped and ransacked in the name of potential profit margin. TPP negotiations have taken place under a freakish cloak of secrecy, denying all but a very few any input into the terms of the agreement. The only people who have had access to the negotiations are 600 advisors.
Why? Because we've given the entire process over to special interests. It's no longer even properly called a trade agreement. It has very little, if anything, to do with trade at this point. And the fact that something like this can be negotiated in secret, it is an indication of how far our standards have fallen.
Today, in the next 5 minutes, we are going to describe to you Investor-State Dispute Settlement Mechanism, or ISDS. Is ISDS.
These four letters are becoming increasingly important. I stands for investor. The first S stands for state. D is dispute or conflict. And the last S is settlement or resolving the conflict. Together, they represent a mechanism for resolving any dispute that arises between private investor and the state. This mechanism is currently featured in free trade negotiations we are conducting, such as the one with the European Union or with TPP group of countries, with the US as the key leader. The EU and the US demand that we comply with their investors' protection conditions, that is, with this ISDS.
Is this mechanism so essential? Why do they require all countries to adopt it?
In principle, it is supposed to create confidence among foreign investors that when they invest in our country, they will not be bullied by our government. If investors have more confidence, it is believed that they will invest more. For example, investors from the EU have brought their money over to Thailand to set up factories. If one day the Thai government decides to expropriate their land, they should be able to sue the government in court. But if they don't trust the Thai judicial system or they want their claims settled quickly, they can resort to ISDS. What is important is that this mechanism allows investors to bypass the Thai courts and save time. The method is for investors to settle the claims by means of international arbitration, such as provided by the ICSID or ICSID of the World Bank, which has a condition that whatever the outcome, the arbitration award is final, and both parties have to comply with it. This arbitration mechanism involves decision-making by three people. The first arbitrator is chosen by the investor, second by the government, and the third is chosen by both parties together. These three people meet in secret, study the treaties in questions, and then decide whether the state is wrong or not. If it is, they decide how much compensation the state must pay for the damage caused.
That sounds good for the investor. They can get quick result this way.
Yes, investors like it very much. During the past 10 years, the number of cases has increased from 118 a year to 390. More than 91% of these cases involve investors from the EU and US suing developing countries' governments. Consequently, many developing countries have to spend a lot of public money in compensation to these foreign investors. The reason for this outcome is because the word expropriation has been interpreted very broadly, almost without limits. A lot of government measures were claimed to be expropriation of private assets by state, either directly or indirectly. Even some good policies that protect people, the environment, and society can be grounds for suing the government for expropriation. For example, if the government takes action that reduce the profit of private businesses or causes them to miss their target return, it can get sued.
Unbelievable. Has this really happened?
It really has. In Australia, for instance, the government passed a law that requires cigarette packs sold in the country to be in one plain color only. to reduce their attractiveness to smokers, especially new ones. The cigarette industry did not like this and filed a lawsuit against the government in the domestic courts. But they lost the case because the Supreme Court reconfirmed that the government rights to legislate to protect the people's health. What happened next is that the industry sued again through the ISDS mechanism that we are talking about. Everyone is watching to see what the outcome will be. Another case is against Germany. The German government decided to phase out nuclear power plants after the Fukushima disaster in Japan and to turn to renewable energy, which is cleaner and more sustainable. A Swedish company then sued the government in order to overturn the policies and to claim compensation through the same ISDS mechanism.
Does this mean that any good public policy that benefits the people but is unsatisfactory to the investor can get challenged and overturned by the private sector?
Exactly. That is why in the FTA negotiations, we need to include exceptions on matters essential to the public interest. Or we could reject the ISDS clause altogether, because so far there has been no proof that all that adoption of ISDS would attract loads more foreign investment into a country as it is claimed.
Now, how is your understanding of the investor-state dispute settlement mechanism after our 5-minute description?
Look, it can't get in here, can it? Nothing can get through those doors.